that most people out there would rather hear DJs talking about things in the great way that they do than have to put up with a lot of music getting in the way and interrupting a DJ's delicate thought processes. Well, now's our chance. We're here to celebrate 25 years of lunacy and broadcasting genius on Radio 1. Let's sit back and enjoy the megatastic story of our favorite national institution from those guys who rarely get the chance to talk about themselves. And why not kick off with the granddaddy of them all, a deep personal friend of mine, and the guy whom I regard not so much as a DJ, but as a philosopher, the truly bonkers Tony Blackburn.
We are the last of the generation of household names as such, because it is more difficult now. There are so many radio stations, so much television now. It's more difficult to make an immediate name for yourself. And I was very lucky. I had the right management. I had a terrific publicity agent, and that's very important. And I think a lot of people don't realise how important the newspapers can be as well. Being constantly in the newspapers is very, very important to projecting an image and a face that goes with the voice. I don't think I marketed myself as a soap powder. I think the manager that I was with very skillfully marketed me as such. I was aware that I was being marketed, but I didn't mind it because the image that they were putting across of me, I could see that what they were getting at, and it was certainly something that I wouldn't have objected to too much. And it wasn't non-accurate either. I mean, they weren't asking me to do things that I wasn't actually doing. Tony Blackburn! I remember opening up a menswear shop, funnily enough, in I think it was either Edinburgh or Glasgow, and they dropped me the wrong side of the road, and there were so many people there. I had police escort there. I remember there were about 13 or 14 policemen there trying to make a way for me to get to the shop, and my jacket was totally ripped off. And there was also a supermarket that opened in Norwich, and there were so many people there, all the windows caved in. So all I did was I walked from the front of the supermarket to the back. I was driven away, and they had to rebuild the place. I mean, it was absolutely amazing in those days. The early days of Radio 1, it was a honeymoon period where the disc jockeys were all, in those days, I suppose it was the flower power era, and we put our suits on to be respectable, and some of the producers at Radio 1 suddenly went all sort of psychedelic on us. But we got that one sorted out pretty quickly. It was very nice in those early days. Everybody was bending over backwards to help one another, and there was a terrific team spirit there. And the BBC was very willing to give us quite a free hand in those days. One thing I did find strange was suddenly this having a producer. I didn't know what that was really, because having been at the pirate radio ships, suddenly we were confronted by the BBC producer who sort of stayed in the studio with us and didn't do anything. And so I had to get rid of that. I had to get rid of that sort of side of things, because I get very shy if there's somebody in the studio with me while I'm broadcasting. So once having sorted that out, it was not too bad. And for the first 5 years at Radio 1, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got carpeted in the early days for mentioning my pantomime too many times that I was appearing in. I also got carpeted for telling the miners when they were on strike to go back to work, which was fair enough. I mean, that was wrong. I think at one stage I tried to solve the Northern Ireland situation in a programme, which probably was, in retrospect, wasn't a thing I would do nowadays, being a more mature person. Tony Blackburn! I think when my personal life went slightly wrong and I was going through a divorce, I think probably everybody, they change a little bit. But behind the scenes, the hierarchy there, they didn't exactly help. They did put the boot in. I don't think I was right in necessarily sharing that part of my life with the listeners. Some of that might have been the fact I was very depressed, and it wasn't helped by the fact that in those days I was taking a bit of Valium to steady my nerves as well. I was taking that, so I was on this slightly downward trend there a little bit. I used to it was at the stage of my life where I was depressed, and I was taking Valium, and probably, I mean, I'm not a great drinker, but I think I was probably at the time drinking too much, certainly at weekends, and I was in a moderate stupor for some of the time. I've always been a bit of a loner, so I didn't have many friends to bring me out of that. It's a tough business, though. It's a tough business, and there's always somebody there that would like to see you lose your job, and they tried to knock me down.
Was that the end of DJ Sad Tony? Not on your Nelly Welly. Tone fought his way right back to the top by using sex as a weapon, and his sexual weapon was a full 12 inches.
And over the air, I used to chat people up, and people used to ring me up, and people used to come on and say, well, I'm wearing stockings and suspenders, and they used to play up to me, and this sort of thing. And the cab drivers loved it particularly. I used to get in cabs, and they'd remark on this program.
Come on.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things.
I just find him insulting, not patronising. Insulting.
And I used to listen to Tony Blackburn, and I thought was good in the 60s. Sorry, Tone, right?
And it's all that. He's trying to do long time, and he's not coming off too well because he's just barefaced sex cackle, isn't it?
That's right, they're all racist, sexist. They take the mickey out of cab drivers, which is a bit of a pastime for celebrities in the media.
Don't ask me about DJs, they want to be shot. Why? Don't believe in them. Why?
What do you think?
I like listening to the music, not to them banter.
When he gets these girls phoning him, he goes right over the top, and he really.
I honestly never listened to it. Tony Blackman is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me embarrassed sometimes, I must admit.
But we all like a joke. Like it's all silly, sexist sort of talk, isn't it? And some of it's a bit stronger.
We were doing a thing called Dial a Date, I think, where we used to fix people up with one another, and particularly if people rather fancied somebody, and they hadn't got enough courage to pluck up and tell them that they would like them. So I used to encourage them to ring up, say where this person was, and if that person was listening, of course, they would realise that person fancied them.
We was listening to Tony Blackburn one morning, and some girl phoned in, and she was working in a certain shop. She fancied a bloke a few shops up.
And I said, well, why don't you go and... She said, oh, I'm too shy to go over and tell him I love him or like him. And I said, well, where would you like to go if you went out? Say, imagine that you could go out with this guy.
She said, well, I'd take him home. And he said, what would you do? She said, I'd take him upstairs and give him a good...
Fuck. So...
And you think, God, no, it can't be true, but yeah, there it was.
I said, well, that sounds like a terrific idea to me. Then we quickly played a record. I make myself out still to be a sex symbol, as David Hamilton does. I mean, we're the two biggest sex symbols in the country, in our minds, you see, and that is the humour of it. And the fun of it is staggering on stage and making a fool of yourself, and that's the fun of it.
Trendsetter or dangerous role model? When deep personal friend and gifted icon Gary Davis is on air, the public is divided. Pop kids idolize him and base themselves on him in dress and outlook, whereas grown-ups are often outraged by Gary's wild and fast lifestyle and over-the-top personality. But hey, they would be. He's young, he's free, he's single and bonkers, he's Gary Davis.
I used to be made out to be the BBC's glamour boy. And that was something that came about was when I first joined the station. I remember after being there probably a few months, I was called into the then program controller's office, and he said, well, your voice is okay, your shows seem to be all right, but nobody knows who Gary Davis is. Who are you? What are you? If you listen to other DJs, Mike Reed, well, everybody knows Mike Reed plays a guitar and likes playing tennis. DLT, well, he lives on a farm and he talks about his animals all the time. He said, who's Gary Davis? What does he do? And I said, well, Gary Davis is just a normal single lad, just like anybody else, who's just moved from Manchester to London, who's staying in a tiny room in his sister's flat, who enjoys going out and having a good time just like anybody else does. And they said, well, play on it. So I did.
Ooh, Gary Davis. Ooh, Gary. Ooh.
And it really took off and it really caught on. People sort of said, yeah, Gary's the boy about town. All the press really loved it. Whenever I was out, people used to take photographs. But then after a few years, it backfires on you because people actually believe what they're reading in the press. They believe that I'm out every single night of the week. I never have been. I never go out more than any other normal person would do. I mean, I don't think I've been out to a club probably in the last 3 or 4 months. Been very busy. But I just love going out with friends, just going out to restaurants, staying in. Staying in now is a real luxury. You know, to be able to have a night in doing nothing, put your feet up on the couch and just sort of sit back and watch a video and not think about